Hey fermenters, Austin here. Welcome to another episode of Fermentation Fact Friday. Today's issue is all about what to do with overripe. All right, let's get started. So, background is maybe you're making kombucha, maybe you forget about it, maybe you go on vacation and you didn't set the timing just right. Anyway, when you get back, you have essentially a very, very sour beverage that you wouldn't really enjoy as kombucha. So all is not lost. There are many things that you can do with overripe kombucha, and that's what we're going to cover today. But first, just want to remind you about Fermenters Club. Our mission is to teach you why and how to ferment food, as well as to help create communities that are connected through our guts. This is a passion project that I've done since 2011, and it's grown into this bundle of different offerings. We've got a whole website with hundreds of recipes and tips on how to get started fermenting, online self-paced classes at our Fermenters Club Academy. That's pre-recorded content. We also have live cultures such as sourdough starter, kefir, kombucha, etc., and coaching services. So if you want one-on-one help on your fermentation game, just reach out to us. And we also do private events around the country, but also around the world, focusing on fermentation. We also have a bi-weekly newsletter. Be sure to subscribe for that. And of course, like, subscribe, and share this content if you enjoy it. And I also wrote a book called Fearless Fermenting. It's a cookbook meets textbook all about food fermentation. And I've got hard copies you can order directly from us at fermentersclub.com, as well as you can find them online at amazon.com. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Let's get to it. So as I say in my book, Fearless Fermenting, kombucha fermentation is a one-way street. It starts its journey as sweet tea, and then dead ends at being essentially vinegar. There's really no turning back down this street. No matter how much you try to sweeten over-fermented kombucha, really nothing's going to be able to overpower the strong acidity that was formed. But again, all is not lost. There are many things we can do with what is essentially vinegar. So let's first talk about the actual fermentation process of kombucha. It's quite fascinating. So a kombucha is made with the help of what's called a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. So it's actually a pellicle. It looks kind of like a blob or a mushroom thingy, a jellyfish perhaps. And that layer, those layers which are made of sugars, house both yeasts and bacteria. And they actually work at different stages of the kombucha brewing. It's fascinating stuff. So initially, the yeasts that are present on the SCOBY go to work and they start to break down some of the sugar that's in the tea into glucose, as well as they create carbon dioxide and a little bit of water. So that's the first stage. The yeasts have first dibs. Then once the yeasts have broken down the glucose into or sucrose down into the simpler sugars, glucose and fructose, then the bacteria now have a food source and they start to create what we know as that new layer or the cellulose mat, which forms always at the top of the brew. And then it winds up creating a seal eventually. It takes about a week for the bacteria to create that first layer. Then once that layer is created, it changes the environment underneath. So there's less oxygen available to the brew, to the liquid underneath. And once that happens, the yeasts then switch to fermentation. And that's when they start to create ethanol, which is also known as alcohol, and carbon dioxide. So you might get a little bit of fizz, a little bit of carbonation, but ethanol is the main byproduct of the yeast. Then at that point, the bacteria take the alcohol and convert it into the various other organic acids and other micronutrients. So it's kind of like a baton race. They pass the baton back and forth, but essentially they're working together to create this byproduct, which a lot of byproducts, which then create what we know as kombucha. So all that said, if the process goes for a very long time, typically it takes about 7 to 21 days, depending on your environment. If it goes longer than that, then what will happen is all of the sugars that were available to both the yeast and the bacteria will eventually be consumed and converted into organic acids. And when that happens, we have something that's very, very sour. So when this happens, it's say longer than generally 3 weeks is a good average. The pH gets low because the amount of acids is increased. And at this point, the liquid is very shelf stable because it has such a low pH and mostly safe to drink. So that said, if it gets too strong, you probably want to dilute it a little bit if you're going to drink it straight, but I'll demonstrate a couple of other things that we can do with it. Usually kombucha, overripe kombucha has around 1 to 2% acidity strength. And compare that to something like raw apple cider vinegar, which has about a 2% acidity level, or vinegar, distilled vinegar, like white vinegar that you might buy at the store, is usually about 5%. So that just gives you some idea of the relative levels of acidity. Now that said, here are some of the organic acids that are created during this process. So with something like vinegar, which is mostly acetic acid, you get sort of one type of acid and it has one type of flavor profile. Kombucha, on the other hand, because of the diversity of bacteria and yeasts, creates a whole host of various organic acids, which all lend to the more complex flavors. So you've got glucuronic acid, gluconic acid, malic acid, oxalic acid, lactic acid, citric acid, and also not on here is acetic acid, which is also vinegar. So that's why kombucha has a very powerful flavor profile, because there's multi layers of various acids. All right, so what can be done about this? Now, I like to use it in place of vinegar. So I'm constantly brewing, most of the year I'm brewing kombucha, and it's usually a little bit more than I can drink and that I can share. So I inevitably do have some extra, and in fact, I even now plan for it. So I haven't personally purchased apple cider vinegar from the store in many years, because that's, if you think of that's one of the main replacements. So raw apple cider vinegar, which is also very good and healthful, can be replaced easily by what we'll call kombucha vinegar, right? So, and in fact, I do have some that I keep on hand. I just have it in a bottle. And this was the product of, again, just a very, very long kombucha fermentation that I did on purpose. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually try to bear a shot of this right now. And you can see, even though there's no more sugars involved, when I opened the cap, it was a little bit, you heard a little bit of a pop. That's because you can't ever get rid of all of the bacteria and yeast. There's gonna be a little bit left. So anyway, I use this, again, as raw apple cider vinegar. So if you're good with shooting ACV, then you'll probably be fine with this, but I just want to give it a little bit of a taste. It's actually still got a little bit of sweetness to it, but yeah, you wouldn't go to a store and buy this and chug it like you would maybe a GT's or some of your other home brew, but it's decent. But if it becomes just way too sour, there's a lot more you can do with it. So again, think of it like you would have a good quality vinegar on hand, mix it into salad dressings. I will make it into marinades if I'm marinating some meat. Again, that acid is useful in the kitchen, so let's put it to use. Of course, you can also use that extra overripe kombucha as a starter liquid for new batches of kombucha, because it is a best practice to have a cup of mature kombucha on hand when you're adding it to a new batch. And that's to help lower the pH into the safe zone when we're starting to make kombucha. So that's one application. You can also use it for something as diverse as a hair tonic. In fact, I will do that from time to time. If you're used to not using shampoo, or if they call it the poo-free, then you can use something like baking soda to wash your hair, and then you use something acidic like vinegar, or in this case kombucha, as a hair tonic to help restore the acidity and the balance of your hair. So that's one of the many uses. If you're also going to make something like fire cider or master tonic, this is a good base to use. In fact, I will take all the ingredients that I use for making fire cider, like jalapeno peppers and horseradish and garlic, and add and infuse that in the vinegar, and then let that sit for about a month. I think you can find that recipe on the website. You can definitely find it in the book, Fearless Fermenting. And another thing you can do, as you would with any vinegar, is you can use it as a household cleaner. Now, early on, I did this. I took some ripe kombucha, I put it into one of those spray bottles so I could dispense it as a cleaning spray. And I came back in a week, and sure enough, a new SCOBY had formed. So what did I learn from that? Is that if I want to use it for something like that, then actually boiling the kombucha, pasteurizing it is recommended, because what that'll do is that'll kill the microbes and create something that's more of an inert liquid. And in the case of something like that, it might make sense to do that, versus if you're going to use it culinarily, there's not really a reason to take that extra step if you don't need to. So these are just some of the uses. If you can think of what you would use vinegar for, there are probably dozens more that I haven't covered here. And if you've got a favorite use for overripe kombucha that you've come up with, feel free to drop it into the comments. So again, find recipes for brewing kombucha and many other things at fermentersclub.com, and definitely have some of these recipes in my book, Fearless Fermenting. And like I said, go ahead and drop a comment to let us know how you would use overripe kombucha. Again, check out all of our free resources at fermentersclub.com. Binge watch on our channel here and avail yourself of some of the resources. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week on Fermentation Fact Friday. Bye.